Coming up on this week's Salt and Sauce Chat Show.
No matter what club you support, Scottish fans are pretty unique in the world. You know, like we've got an unbelievable fan base that are really passionate about their team, whatever that team may be.
What was the standard like over in Holland compared to over here in Scotland?
It was great. The standard was. It's going to sound like I think the standard across the board in Holland was excellent. So you would go and play a kind of lower level team, and we were kind of bottom half the table team. You go and play a team that was similar to us, and the quality was fantastic. I mean, huge emphasis on getting the ball down the ground and playing. They just don't really tolerate goalkeepers punting the ball up the field and stuff like that. So obviously, it was a choice between Colchester or Denver, Colorado. So I went out to Denver for a couple of weeks, and it's pretty difficult not to like Denver, Colorado. I got there in July. It was like 90 degrees, blue skies and sunshine. You get the Rocky Mountains.
Welcome along to another episode of the Salt and Sauce Chat Show. My name's David Simmons, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by ex-football player. He's now Academy Director at Nashville SC, all the way from the state of Tennessee. We've got Mr. Jamie Smith on the show. Jamie, thanks for taking the time out, mate.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, I mean, you're a product of the Celtic youth system, aren't you? What was it like coming through the ranks at Celtic as a young kid?
Yeah, listen, I grew up in Glasgow and I was a Celtic fan. So to be involved with a club at the youth level was something that every young Glasgow boy that supports Celtic could dream of, you know, and to come through the system and obviously represent the first team was even better. It was great. It was something as a young kid that you always want to experience, and having the chance and the opportunities to get to do that was great. I don't want to keep using words like great and excellent, but it really was, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll get used quite a few times, mate. But what was the standard like? What other teammates were coming through that youth system with you? Was there any of them that went on to carve a career in the sport?
Yeah, myself, Mark Burchill, Stephen Craney. There was a couple of Irish boys, Liam Miller, Colin Healy. We all kind of came through as a group together. There was a few boys that were older than us and a few that were younger that obviously did really well. But from the younger age groups, it was myself, Mark Burchill, Stephen Craney, those boys, you know.
Yeah, you touched on how you got called up to the first team. Do you remember that occasion when you first got your first call up to the first team squad?
I think I was probably too scared. I think my mind just went blank the first time that you're sitting in the youth dressing room at Barrowfield, and they're like, right, you're going to train the first team today. You're like, you know, it's brilliant, and at the same time it was terrifying, you know, because up until then, you look at the first team players as, you know, that's who I want to try and emulate, you know. Then all of a sudden you're getting the opportunity to actually be on the field with them training, which was, it was obviously great, but scary at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, in total you played 66 games for Celtic, scoring 6 goals in all competition across 5 years as a senior player. You were part of the famous 2003 squad that made it to the UEFA Cup final. What's your memories of that campaign?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a year that, and obviously, the kind of statistics show I was never a starting player. That the group that was maybe the best Celtic team for generations. You know, obviously making it to the UEFA Cup final was kind of proof of that. It was the whole year. It was. I think Rangers were really strong that year. They won the league. I think we ended up not winning anything that year. But I do remember the European nights and having some involvement in them, and I guess there was just a sense of, in that competition, we there was something that you could just kind of sense was really positive about the group. We played a lot of really good teams, some fantastic performances, you know, making it all the way at the final. Obviously, typical Scottish fashion, you make it all the way at the final and you get pipped right at the end. But that was also a brilliant Porto team, you know. Mourinho was the manager. They had a whole bunch of players that went on from, that Porto team won the Champions League the next year. And then most of those players were sold to like Chelsea, Barcelona, stuff like that. So it was they were a top quality side. But I think, you know, throughout that whole run, I think we showed how good that Celtic team was. And like I said, it was for me, it was definitely the best Celtic team for generations. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's talk about that night. I know that, like you said, you might not have been involved in that campaign as much as you would like, but that night in Seville, I mean, the Celtic support, they just completely took over that city, didn't they?
Yeah, we stayed in a place called Hereth, about an hour away. So I remember we came in and trained the day before in the stadium. But I remember driving on the bus heading to Seville, and as we kind of got into the city, I mean, everyone kind of jokes, "Oh, Celtic had 1 million fans and all that," right? But I don't know exactly how many were there, but pretty much as soon as we got into the city and certainly around the stadium, I mean, everywhere you looked, you just saw like green and white Celtic strips. That's all you could see. It was again just typical of the kind of Scottish fans in general. Whether you're a Celtic fan, a Rangers fan, a Scotland fan, in a little bit here, I'll speak really fondly of the Aberdeen fans as well. No matter what club you support, Scottish fans are pretty unique in the world. Like we've got an unbelievable fan base that are really passionate about their team, whatever that team may be.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the result didn't quite go the way that you would have liked that night, but your Celtic career saw you win 2 league titles. You're part of the squad that won the League Cup in 2001 as well, beating Killie 3-0 in the final at Hampden. What do you remember about these occasions? What was the celebrations like after the league titles and obviously the win at Hampden? What do you recall from them?
I remember getting a couple of medals and feeling like I was part of the squad, but I just never played as much as I'd have wanted to. But yeah, it was great. It was anytime you win something, it's a really good feeling. It's a positive moment. The celebrations were great. As a young boy in that group, it was I wasn't one of the main kind of the mainstay players, but just to experience it, to be around it. It was a team that you grew up as being a fan of, and just to get those experiences were brilliant.
I mean, like you say, I mean, that squad was fantastic. You had players like Henrik Larsson and Lubo Moravcik, Chris Sutton, just to name a few. I think you touched on this briefly earlier, but I mean, how was it like training with these guys, like picking up bits and pieces, even getting feedback from the likes of Larsson? I mean, how was it? That was your full-time job, mate, spending time with these guys. It obviously had some effect on you.
Yeah.
Positively, sorry.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. They were, I mean, pretty much every single player in the team was like an international player, and good ones at that. And every day it was just a challenge. Every day you were training, it was such a challenge. You were taken way out of your comfort zone because it was, again, the level was so high. But with that, you don't get better if you're not being challenged. So I think looking back now, when I think about it, I think about how much development personally I had during those times, because there was, again, every day. You can't go in and have a 50%, 75% day. It was like, certainly for me, it was like I had to be 100% or as close to that every single day. But the development that whole period, how I developed as a player was massive.
And what about the gaffer? Obviously, Martin O'Neill was in charge during a spell when you were there as well. What was he like as a manager?
I thought he was great. He had a unique way of interacting with the players. When he had John Roberts and Steve Walford as the assistant coaches, and you could chat away to those guys really freely. They were great. But when Martin walked into the room, everyone kind of settled down. And I mean, everyone, not just the young boys, everyone kind of had went a little bit quieter. And he was the type of guy that you maybe wouldn't speak to him for about 2 weeks, almost to the point where you're like, I don't know if he likes me anymore. And then he would sit beside you on the bus or at lunch and make you feel like £1 million, And he does just great way of kind of man management. I think when you think about all the great managers, they were brilliant at managing people and different individuals.
Yeah, I mean, and also during your time at Celtic, you got capped twice for Scotland in friendly match against Austria and Ireland. That must have been a huge privilege representing the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's when you're a little boy growing up, to get the chance to play for the club that you support is, something that you just, you can't really quite put your finger on it what it means. But to get to play for your country is just, it's probably even bigger. It's just to get to play for Scotland, and I represented Scotland through all the youth levels. But to get your full kind of call up and get your full caps, it was something that you don't really plan for. You don't really think about, because you can't really, as a young boy, you don't really see it happening. But yeah, fortunately for me, and privileged to get to represent the country at a full level.
I mean, after your career finished at Celtic, you moved over to Holland for a season. I hope I get this right. It was Dutch club Edo Den Haag.
Yeah, Aberdeen Haag, yeah.
Yep. What was the standard like over in Holland compared to over here in Scotland?
It was great. The standard was. It's going to sound like I think the standard across the board in Holland was excellent. So you would go and play a kind of lower level team, and we were kind of bottom half the table team. You go and play a team that was similar to us, and the quality was fantastic. I mean, huge emphasis on getting the ball down the ground and playing. They just don't really tolerate goalkeepers punting the ball up the field and stuff like that. So everything was, keepers were rolling it out, passing it out to the full-backs or the centre-backs, and you would try to always play through, play up the field, pass the ball up the field. But the standard across the board was excellent. Now, at that time, Celtic and Rangers were both really strong. Then there was a bunch of clubs, I would say, behind Celtic and Rangers. In Holland, you had Feyenoord, Ajax, and PSV Eindhoven, and then you had a bigger group of teams or clubs that were behind that. But the overall quality was just really, really good.
I mean, when that move came along, was that the right move for you? Was that the right time to move on from Celtic?
It was the right time to move from Celtic for sure, because I was offered a contract, but Martin O'Neill said, "Listen, you're not going to play as much as you need to, or as much as you want to." So it was kind of that way where I knew it was time to leave Celtic, and then going to Holland, different culture, different language, different type of football. The experience I gained there was great for what was going to come next in my career. I think the biggest change for me was, aside from the different type of football and all that stuff and the different language, it was playing week in, week out, which at the senior level, at the professional level, I wasn't used to, because that kind of 4 or 5 year period where I was involved with the first team at Celtic, I would say I was a bit part player, but I was never a starting player, I was never in the starting 11 consistently. So that was the biggest change for me, was just kind of getting my head around playing every game, week in, week out.
I mean, after that season in Holland, you returned back to Scotland for the 05-06 season and joined Aberdeen. After a season in Holland, was the move to Pittodrie the right one for you? Were you looking to get back over to Scotland?
Yeah, my wife, we just really young kids at the time, and it was just a challenge with 3 young kids. So my wife moved back to Scotland. So I always knew that it was just get through this season. I actually signed a 3-year contract in Holland, but after the first year, sat down with the head coach and just said, "Listen, my wife and kids are back home," and they were like, "Yeah, I think it's right for you to go back." So to get the opportunity to come back to not just the UK but Scotland, it was absolutely the right thing for my career at the time. When I look back, and it was obviously right for my family.
I mean, I think you won the fans over quite quickly up at Pittodrie. You scored the late winner against Rangers in only your 3rd match for the Dons to knock them out of the League Cup. What was life like now applying your trade for a different club in Scotland? Obviously, you had your pledge your allegiance to Celtic, and now you're up in Aberdeen. Did you fit in quite quickly up there?
Yeah, I knew a lot of the players because I'd played with them at the Scottish youth teams and stuff, and even as youth players, we played against each other, all the time. So I knew a lot of the players already, and then it's always strange putting on a new jersey, a new strip, especially when it's in your own country. It's always a little bit different. But I loved my time at Aberdeen. It was great. It was 4 years up there. Had its challenges, like everything does, but overall, I just loved it. And good rapport with the fans. They were great to me. Loved playing for the 2 Jimmies and those guys. That was excellent, But yeah, can't speak highly enough about my time at Aberdeen.
I mean, what were they like as characters? I take it you're talking about Jimmy Calderwood and Jimmy Nicholl.
Oh, they were brilliant, yeah. Because they were both big Rangers fans, very well documented Rangers fans, right? And I remember that actually the game against when I scored it was my first goal for Aberdeen against Rangers, and it was like a last minute goal. I remember after the game, Jimmy Calderwood came in, and he was obviously delighted that we'd won the game, but he came in and said, you wouldn't have done that against Celtic, would you?
Brilliant. That speaks volumes about the kind of characters that they were. You scored a few key goals for Aberdeen. You scored twice in December 2007 in the UEFA Cup campaign against FC Copenhagen, which seen Aberdeen obviously reach the last 32 of that tournament. Do you remember that European campaign now with Aberdeen playing a much more first team part?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we had a good season the previous year, and I think we finished third in the league, and we qualified for the UEFA Cup. We had a qualifier game against Dnipro from Ukraine, who were a really good team. They were really talented. I remember playing the first game at Pittodrie. Bit of a kind of nothing really happened. Both teams cancelled each other out. We didn't concede an away goal, which was good. Then we went over to Dnipro, over to Ukraine, to play the second leg of the tie, and that was definitely an experience. It was an old crumbling stadium. Their fans were pretty full on, you know. I remember training the night before the game, and they were, you know, a bunch of fans must have congregated outside the stadium and started like burning tires and stuff. So we were trying to train. There's this black smoke just like coming over the field, and but that was, you know, great performance that night. We drew 1-1. Darren Mackey scored a really good goal, and we held on for sure because they were just they had a lot of Ukrainian national team players and a lot of players you'd never heard of, but really good. So we kind of held on. Jamie Langfield made some big saves that night, and yeah, we got through the group stages, and then it continued from there. The group stages were interesting as well.
I bet. So after 85 appearances, 12 goals for Aberdeen in 2009, it was time for you to move on. Did you leave Pittodrie on good terms with the club?
I did, yeah. I had, you know, my second season I had to get 2 surgeries, so I missed a lot of that. And then my last season, my 4th season, injuries kind of come back in again. So I definitely struggled on that front. And the manager, Jimmy and the staff were leaving the club after, I think, 5 years Jimmy was there. They were leaving the club, and the reality is the club, they didn't really want to offer me a contract, I think probably because of the injuries, which is totally understandable. That's the business that we're in. That's their prerogative. So I knew it was probably time to move on from Aberdeen. We didn't want to leave because we loved the place, we loved the city. Family were settled, but yeah, it was, you know, there wasn't really an option to stay.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, in 2009, you made the move across the pond over to Colorado Rapids. How was that move from Scotland over to the States? I mean, was there any other clubs that you could have potentially joined at that stage?
There was a couple of opportunities in England, kind of lower kind of leagues in England, which wasn't really as appealing. Through my connection with Steve Guppy, I played with Steve at Celtic. Steve was the assistant manager in Colorado, so Steve called me and was like, "What are you doing? What are you thinking about?" And I know that Paul Lambert had called me as well about going down to England, because Paul Lambert had just taken, I think it was Colchester job maybe. So obviously it was a choice between Colchester or Denver, Colorado. So I went out to Denver for a couple of weeks, and it's pretty difficult not to like Denver, Colorado. I got there in July. It was like 90 degrees, blue skies and sunshine. You get the Rocky Mountains. We went to did the tour of the stadium and started training. Everything was just immaculate. The stadium was great. The training field was excellent. So that was like, yeah, this is a good place to be. And when I went out for the 2 weeks, got the offer to sign the contract, signed there, did all the visa stuff and all the paperwork. But yeah, that was how that kind of materialised. It was through my connection with Steve Guppy, who I'd played with.
Oh, there you go. So did the whole family move over with you at that time, or was that later on?
They moved over a little bit later, and it's probably a good thing, because we just left Aberdeen and we were kind of in between, and the kids were going to be unsettled. So we thought, let me go out here first just to see how it goes, because it's one of those ones you just don't know what it's going to be like. Again, different culture, different type of football. Although everyone speaks the same language here, there was definitely a transitional period and try to kind of get used to the culture in the US, because it's just different. So the family stayed back for a while until I kind of got settled. And then I think the first couple of games, I got a bad knee injury and ended up being out for about 8 months with that. I had to get surgery and everything. So, but it was part of the experience, and I'm still, almost 12 years later, I'm still here in the US.
I mean, we talked about how the standard was different in Holland compared to Celtic. How was the standard over in the States when you joined Colorado? Were you surprised at obviously how good the standard was, or were you obviously expecting that going over?
No, I think everyone's got a kind of misconception that the MLS or the football or soccer as we call it over here is not as good as it is in Europe, and certainly obviously the English Premier League and like the Bundesliga and all these big leagues are just that they are the highest level. But moving over here, I would probably say I wasn't expecting it to be as good, and it was much better than I thought it was going to be. And then again, you go 10, 12 years later, and it's even better again. There's a great sporting infrastructure here in the US. There's loads of really good athletes. Boys that are physically in great condition. So that was obviously challenging to adapt to that. But yeah, it was enjoyable. It was great to make the move over.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, I mean, I'm a football coach myself over here in Scotland, and obviously one thing lockdown's brought us is like Zoom meetings like this, what we're doing right now. So going through the SFA pathway over here, I was surprised at the amount of American coaches and Canadian coaches that were actually joining in with that. How's the standard of coaching over there? I take it there's a big influx of young, enthusiastic coaches coming through in America as well.
There is now. I would say, for the most part, if you think about the kind of main American sports, baseball, basketball, American football, they're all very coach-centric, so they're coach-driven. The coach will call the plays. He's the one that decides what's going to happen. That's just American sport, and that's definitely translated over into youth football, youth soccer. But there's been a big shift. I think the US Soccer Federation have done a really good job with the coach education system. Major League Soccer have done a great job with the coach education system. So both between the federation and the league, we've got there's multiple pathways and there's multiple ways that coaches can develop, and I'm kind of a product of that, to be honest. I came through the US system and the MLS system. Major League Soccer work closely with the French Federation, and obviously in France there's a bunch of good, excellent coaches, excellent players. So I've had experience both with the French Federation, the US Soccer Federation, and it's definitely helped me develop as a coach.
Fantastic. I mean, we did talk, going back to your sort of career, we touched on how you got a bad injury quite early on in your campaign with Colorado. You bounced back in total, you made 62 appearances, scoring 7 times for the Rapids before calling it a day in January 2014. Was it at this point that you moved into the academy coaching side of things with Colorado?
Yeah, I think it was the November 2011, we were playing a playoff game, and for those who don't know, Americans love their playoff sports, and the MLS is set up the same way. It's actually great. We benefited from it in 2010 at Colorado because we didn't finish top of the league, but we made the playoff spot and we ended up winning the whole MLS Cup championship. So that was great. You get to go and visit the White House and meet Barack Obama and stuff, which was totally surreal. But I got the injury at the end of 2011, and it was a completely ruptured my cruciate ligament. So my knee was not good. I came back after about 8 months, 9 months, and I just didn't feel the same. I played for another year and a half. It got to the end of 2013, and Colorado weren't going to offer me a contract, similar to Aberdeen. I was 33 at that time, and just wasn't playing at the same level as I previously could play at. But the club did say, we'd love you to be part of the academy program. So I kind of didn't have much time to think about it. I jumped straight from deciding I was going to retire, which was a big decision, to within 4 or 5 days having to take a team at the Colorado Rapids Academy. So that was, I didn't have time to dwell on things and wrap my head around it. It was just go from playing into coaching straight away. And for anyone that's done it, I'm sure they'll agree, it's a different job, completely different job. Playing the game is one thing. It's great to have played the game and have that experience and to carry that forward to when you start coaching. But it's a completely different role. As a player, we're selfish, right? You look after yourself. Everything you do is about yourself. And when you become a coach, none of it's about you, and everything's about the players. So that was definitely something that I had to kind of wrap my head around. But I didn't have too much time to dwell on retiring. Something I've done for 17, 18 years. It was right. I need to jump into this new role, this new job.
I mean, well, that was when you were at Colorado. You're now down in Nashville in Tennessee. Today you're head of academy at the newly founded Nashville SC. What does your role involve there?
So I oversee the whole academy program. So currently we've got 3 teams. We started with the younger age groups, under 13s, 14s, 15s. And we wanted to take more of a kind of organic approach, start with the younger age groups and just grow it every year. So basically, I oversee the whole program from the coaching methodology, curriculum, all those kind of technical components to the kind of structure, residency program where we can bring kids in to stay on campus. We've just moved into a brand new facility, which is excellent. I mean, we've got 3 fields, 2 grass fields and a turf field. We've got all the technology that we need. The club have been, the resources the club have provided, the academy program is just amazing. You know, we certainly never had that growing up, even at Celtic, but that's obviously a sign of the times. But we've got, you know, the club have been, the support that I've had from the club has been nothing short of just excellent, you know. And, you know, I oversee 10 staff members. We've got 3 teams. So it's exciting to be here, to be in the new facility, to oversee every component of the academy. I miss the coaching side of things because I don't coach a team. I mean, I'm on the field every night. I'm more helping the coaches and coaching the coaches, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the main aim is obviously to bring these kids through to play for the first team. I had a quick Google. Am I right seeing the first team play at the Nissan Stadium? Is that right?
Yeah, we are. So that's the American football stadium we're playing at right now. But we are in the process of building our own stadium, which will be ready in, I think it's 2000, some point next year. The stadium's going to be ready, and it's going to be the largest soccer-specific stadium in the US, which is really exciting. You know, the plans and everything for it look amazing. So we're at the Nissan Stadium right now, which is where the Tennessee Titan American football team play. In fact,
that facility looks frightening. It looks unbelievable.
Yeah, well, our first game before COVID hit, our first game that the first team had last year, the inaugural game, we had like 60,000 fans in the stadium. Place was packed. It was fantastic.
I mean, you mentioned when you jumped from Scotland over to Colorado, the sunny summer with the Rocky Mountains in the background. How's the transition been from going to Colorado down to Nashville? Obviously, it's quite well known as being at the music scene, Nashville. But what's it like living there and setting up home there now?
Yeah, this place is great. I mean, right now, if I opened the blinds behind me, you'd see the place is covered in snow. We got a lot of snow, which is not common for Tennessee. But I mean, the weather's great. The place is excellent. It's a really nice place to live. It's one of those destinations that everyone wants to come to. You know, like people are moving here. I don't know. They were saying it was like between 50 and 60 people moving here every single day to the kind of Nashville area. So this place is expanding and growing. But it's just a nice place to be. It's a great part of the country to live.
I mean, so is Nashville home for now, or is there a plan to return to Scotland, or is America home for life?
I don't know. For now, we want to stay here. You know, my kids have spent way more than half their lives in the US, so they are. This is, I think this will be home for them. Yeah. But yeah, this is, it's for now. It's stay here. I love the job that I'm in, getting to work with young players and getting to be part of a really exciting MLS club. So for now, it's definitely just to hang out here, see what happens.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously here in Scotland, I mean, some of my friends had the opportunity to do it when we were younger as well. Is they go over to America, they do football or soccer scholarships, like you say, or they come over and they help out in summer camps. Obviously, due to COVID, that's probably not going to happen this summer. What sort of effect have you seen COVID have on football over there in the States?
It's definitely affected. It's definitely affected everything, every kind of walk of life, and it's affected, pretty much every family. On the footballing side, it's we're doing as much as we can. We've got our players in training. We've got all our COVID protocols in place. I know the league shut down for quite a few months last year. The MLS shut down for quite a few months because, like everything, every league, it was just a case of how do we deal with this, how do we cope with it. And I do think it's been incredibly challenging for most people. Obviously, I get to do something that I love. I get to be on the football field every night. So we've adapted. We've been really resilient through the whole process, and hoping that we're going to kind of move out of this, transition out of this soon. And get back to what people call some kind of normality.
Get fans back in stadiums, bums on seats, enjoying the sport again. Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I wish you all the best in Nashville, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Jamie Smith.
Thank you very much, folks.